Hi everyone, this is Jesse, VOCEL's Executive Director. Thanks for listening. At VOCEL, we talk a lot about how and why children need play. But today, I want to talk with you about something slightly different, but closely related: how and why children need to move. In a bit, I'm going to talk about the benefits of movement, because knowing those benefits may change the way you think about your kiddos' movement and play. But first, I want to touch on this point, that I think for us as adults, we often fully accept children's movements at certain times, in certain places, in certain contexts. We like when our children are active at the playground, or at soccer practice, or at the trampoline park. But when they're bouncing around their bedroom at 8 p.m., pretending like it is the trampoline park, or having a full-on wrestling match at the exact moment when I'm trying to get them out the door to school, I don't like that so much. But there's an intersection here with one of our previous discussion topics, self-regulation. If we acknowledge that children's self-regulation is still in development, or that their ability to control their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors is very much under construction in these early years, then it's easier to understand why children move at times when we might not think it's ideal, like when they run around the house during dinner or are tiny tornadoes at bedtime. I think a valuable conceptual framework here is one we call on at VOCEL often, that behavior always tells us something. Whether it's intentional on the part of the child or subconscious, their behavior is telling us something, giving us a clue to a child's need. And in the context of today's topic, a child's movement is almost always seeking to meet a need. Maybe it's that their body needs to move. Maybe they're seeking some type of additional stimulation, or maybe they're seeking human connection. So when my child is running, jumping, climbing at times or in spaces when I don't want them to be doing those things, pausing to take a breath and asking myself what need they might be seeking to meet here has been helpful. When I'm at my best, in full honesty, I am not always at my best, but when I am, this line of thinking shifts my response from, "Oh my God, stop wrestling," to, "Okay, you both clearly need to move your bodies. Let's do 10 more seconds of wrestling before we get our shoes on." 10, 9, 8. Okay, now that we got in those 10 seconds of wrestling, let's dive into part 1, reframing movement as the good thing it is. In society, we've been pretty conditioned to think of lots of movement as a bad thing. For the most part, our school system is built on the expectation that kids sit down, sit still, stop touching your friend, stop bouncing in your seat. Kids who move less are seen as better behaved, more mature or developed, more in control. With the push for more testing and higher academic standards in the early grades, there is even more time spent sitting and less time to move. And this continues into adulthood. Lengthy meetings and full workdays happen with the expectation that a couple-minute stretch break is sufficient for 2 hours of sitting. This overall societal preference for stillness and that pressure and internalized belief that movement equals bad behavior, that can subconsciously play out in the way we respond to our children. Now, this works against the fact that movement is actually a really good thing for our kids in so many ways, but I'll just briefly touch on 3 reasons. First, and maybe most obvious, movement prepares kids to move. Movement strengthens gross motor skills, coordination, balance. If we want our children to be good at moving their bodies, to do well in athletics, to be confident playing games on the playground at recess, we have to give them lots of opportunities to move. They have to practice moving to get good at moving. This intersects with movement's role in developing confidence and healthy risk-taking skills. I can't tell you how many times friends or family have been at my home and instinctually scooped up my toddler while he was awkwardly climbing the stairs for fear that he might fall. But that awkward stair climbing at 18 months old was preparing him to be a confident stair climber by 2 years old. When a young child climbs up, let's say, boulders at a park and doesn't fall, they're learning to trust themselves. They're learning their own power. If they fall, but you help them try again, they're learning that they can lean on trusted adults for support. If they fall and get up on the second, third, or fourth time, they're learning perseverance. But if a child trying to climb up on that large rock hears from us, "Oh no, honey, you can't do that yet, that's not safe," then we shouldn't be surprised when they transfer that same concern or fear to the next time they're climbing at the playground. But if we say, "Wow, that looks challenging. Does your body feel safe? I'm here if you need help," then I bet the next time they're at the playground, they're going to ask themselves those same questions. If we accept and encourage our kids' instincts around movement, the words we use to build their confidence and remind them to check in with themselves, those words will become their inner dialogue the next time around. Of course, I'm not advocating for complete laissez-faire permission for our young children to do whatever they want without any supervision. Not at all. But if we keep the benefits of movement at the front of our minds, I think we'll be less likely to stop our kids' attempts to move and more mindful of how to preserve their safety while encouraging their movement. And the final benefit I'll mention today is that study after study have shown children learn better after moving and while they're moving. One study found that when learners were doing, moving, acting, interacting, it actually changed the way their brains worked and accelerated the learning process. So this supports the idea that movement shouldn't just be limited to brain breaks. Currently, too many schools think about giving children a brain break or a chance to move so that they then can sit back down and listen and learn. But that logic ignores the research that there's such value to children moving as part of their learning. This intersects with the role of agency or choice in learning. If a child isn't moving, typically they have very little agency. It's a more passive activity. Think of your child watching TV or listening to you or a teacher read something to them. On the flip side, if a child is, let's say, organizing their toys into specific categories and they think of something that they need to enhance this sorting and they run downstairs into the basement to get it, not only did the ability to move allow them to extend their learning in this creative way, but it's very likely that the fact that they were moving to begin with contributed to their brain's neurons firing in a way that prompted that idea in the first place. Okay, so more than halfway through for today, we've established movement matters. Movement begets better movement, it supports confidence and healthy risk-taking, and it promotes better academic learning, creativity, and critical thinking too. So you may be thinking, okay, fine, Jesse, I get it. Movement's good. How do I possibly get my adorable, loving Tasmanian devil of a child all the movement their little heart desires? Well, here we go. Part 2, filling that movement bucket. Just as with any other need our child has, or we have for ourselves for that matter, it's always better if we can front load and meet the need proactively. Think of it like a bucket. Can we keep the bucket mostly full rather than waiting for an empty bucket? It's no different with movement. And with it being winter in Chicago, keeping that movement bucket at least half full can be no small feat. So I advise a proactive, intentional, and integrated approach. By proactive, I mean as much as possible prompt movement before your child demonstrates that they haven't had enough. By intentional, I mean think about the moments you typically get frustrated because your little one is out of control. There's a good chance those are the moments when the movement they've been getting hasn't met their needs, and their movement bucket is empty. For me, that's when I pick up my son from school. He is bouncing off the walls. So I know that we need to allow 5 minutes in our schedule for him to hang on the monkey bars. Or I need to suggest that he race me to the car. If I try to just push through, I'm guaranteed to make it harder for both of us. By integrated, I mean incorporate it into whatever you're already doing. So if you're getting the kids out the door for school in the morning, how can you incorporate movement? Maybe they gallop to the door, put on their shoes, and then jump 10 times. Maybe they're older and you ask them to army crawl their way there. If you're getting ready for dinner, have your child put the plates on the table, then do wall push-ups for 10 seconds. Put the forks on the table, now 10 jumping jacks. Put the cups on the table, touch their toes for 10 seconds. Now, all of these types of movement give your child different types of sensory input and can serve different purposes for your child. 2 common purposes that you might be interested in are calming and alerting. Movement that's calming or organizing calms our kids down, gets them more in control, and prepares them for more sedentary activities, like going to bed. And alerting movement, that's the kind that helps wake up their senses and get them ready to go again. That kind is ideal for transitions from a calmer activity, so maybe after a nap or after watching TV. And while, of course, every child is different, and what one child finds calming, not every child will, there are some types of movement that most kids find calming, and some that most find alerting. Alerting activities are things like swinging, spinning or twirling, jumping jacks, bouncing on a trampoline, running, or skipping. Whereas activities that help a child organize themselves or calm their bodies are those that involve sensory input to the muscles, tendons, and joints. Anything that involves pressure, hanging, pushing. Think about things like yoga poses, bear hugs, or other deep squeezes, moving heavy furniture or carrying something heavy, wall pushes, army crawling, or even crawling through a tunnel. There are plenty more alerting and organizing activities that you can Google for your kiddo's age, but the important thing to note here is that movement is not all created equal. A friend asked me recently how soon before bed we should cut off our kids' movement. And really, there's no one answer. It depends. Calming and organizing movements can happen right up until bedtime, which is music to my husband's ears, who loves roughhousing with our kids. Bear hugs? Check. Making a James sandwich with pillows for bread is a great way to begin his bedtime routine. Generally speaking, though, I'd keep twirling, relay races, or jumping on a trampoline to a minimum for at least an hour before bedtime. All right, folks, until next time, thanks so much for listening, and happy playing and moving.